In today's episode, we'll be taking a deep dive into why MTHFR is only one piece of the fertility puzzle and how your genes can impact your fertility and getting pregnant. Welcome to the Finally Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, the podcast helping women identify the real reasons you haven't conceived or stayed pregnant so you and your partner can finally grow the family of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. Let's dive in, shall we? In this episode, you'll discover why MTHFR is not the whole story, how oxidative stress and genetic weaknesses can affect your egg and sperm quality, and how genetic testing can uncover hidden causes of fertility struggles. I'll be talking with Jacqueline Downs, a functional genomics analyst and author of the academically published book, Enhancing Fertility Through Functional Medicine, using nutrigenomics to solve unexplained infertility. She helps clients and practitioners move past puzzling roadblocks and individualized protocols through the use of genomic interpretation, functional lab testing, and a meticulous intake consultation. So, welcome, Jacqueline. I am super excited for this conversation today.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so your book has been near my bedstand. I think it's been a really fun read to do as I'm really just diving more and more into client cases, especially clients who have maybe been a little bit trickier in terms of what is going on here, right? We've tried some things, we're not really seeing the shifts that we would expect. So, what is going on? So, let's get started. I think that the MTHFR mutation has become one of those things that you see often on social media. It's almost like folic acid was like the glorified B vitamin, but now we're learning so much about choline as well. There's so much more to just having an MTHFR mutation. So why does that not stand alone? Like that's not the only potential issue, right, that could be going on with someone's fertility struggles.
Yeah, in my book, I talk about how so much emphasis is placed on MTHFR, but I'm not discounting the importance of it, but we can't just focus all of our attention on that single gene because functional genomics, no SNP, which is a single nucleotide polymorphism. A SNP is like a rung in a ladder that can be a little bit different. So everybody has different versions of it. But we can't just focus on MTHFR because there are so many genes and enzymes and nutrients upstream, downstream, to the left, to the right, to the back, to the front that affect the functioning of MTHFR. For instance, I just made a post about how it doesn't matter whether or not you have an MTHFR variation. If you don't have enough vitamin B2, MTHFR can't work. So everybody focuses on methylfolate or folic acid or folinic acid, but really we can't just focus on that. So I always use the analogy just focusing on MTHFR, or maybe even the other buzzwords are COMT and MAOA, just focusing on those is like thinking you know what a puzzle looks like based on a couple pieces. There's just not enough points of data to get a full comprehensive picture of what's really going on.
So it sounds like there's a lot of other things that are impacting the MTHFR, whether you have the mutation or not.
Yes, absolutely. And another one, I just actually wrote my newsletter about this. I have a gene scene newsletter where I spotlight a different gene each week, and it's on the folate receptor, the FOLR gene. And so if the folate can't even get into the cell, it doesn't matter if you have a genetic variant in MTHFR or not, because the folate can't even get out of the starting gate, basically.
Absolutely. And so oxidative stress, that is another big term that we're seeing a lot. And I don't know that people necessarily have a full understanding of what is that? What does that even mean? And how can our genes influence that?
Yes. So part of the reason why I wrote my book is because I wanted oxidative stress to become a household term, just like inflammation. And oxidative stress and inflammation are this vicious cycle. So one causes the other. So what I consider the definition of oxidative stress is the reason why we need antioxidants, right, to neutralize the oxidation. But oxidative stress causes damage to the cell, to the cellular structures, and also the information that the cell contains. And so antioxidants help to protect the cell from that oxidative stress because we need to have healthy cells. It really all comes down to the health of the cell. Our nutrients need to get into the cell, our waste needs to get out of the cell, and cells need to be able to communicate with each other. Oxidative stress is extremely important because if it is left unchecked, it will lead to chronic inflammation that is at the root of most conditions in our modern society.
Mm-hmm. So, how can oxidative stress affect someone's fertility?
So the eggs and sperm typically take the first hit when there is some sort of stressor. And so oxidative stress can be caused by, most people think of environmental toxins or just stress in general, but really it can be caused by nutrient deficiencies, and it's also just a natural byproduct of metabolism. We need oxidative stress to fight off pathogens and to help our body heal, but it's when it becomes chronic and low grade and long term is when it's the problem. And then it starts affecting our cells. And like I said, our egg and sperm are the first to take the hit because those are more quote unquote disposable in order for us to stay alive. We don't need to use those cells in order to stay alive. And so the body basically robs Peter to pay Paul. And that is why our reproductive cells are the most vulnerable to oxidative stress. And then that affects our fertility. And there are a lot of genes that can cause oxidative stress, whether they cause nutrient deficiencies because they're not transported or they're not getting into the cell, or because we're not making enough antioxidants, or, and I'm finding this very, very often, especially with my fertility clients, is that our pro-inflammatory messenger genes are just hypervigilant and on high alert, and they're overfiring. And so it's having this exaggerated response to something that doesn't need to be that powerful.
So, someone's state of their genes could maybe predispose them to more oxidative stress?
100%. Yes. Now, I want to emphasize that just because you have a genetic variant doesn't mean that it's doomed to express. So that is where the whole like genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. But if you have like a polygenic risk score, so if you have a genetic predisposition for low glutathione production or recycling and excessive inflammatory messenger production and nutrient deficiencies, all of those are going to be like marbles on the side of the scale for there to be some oxidative stress and issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Because I know we were talking about like the weaknesses in the genes that could affect egg quality or sperm quality. So is that kind of where that comes in?
Yes. Yep. So anything that's going to affect your oxidative stress or your nutrient status, especially your detoxification ability, is going to impact the cellular health, which will cause oxidative stress.
Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling like this is where nutrition and lifestyle play a huge role because, like you said, our genes hold the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger, right?
Yes. Yep.
So if someone is maybe not eating like a high quality whole foods diet, or maybe they're under a lot of stress or just have a lot of chemicals in the home and things like that, then that can make it more likely for certain gene issues to express themselves.
Yes, 100%. And then also if those toxins bioaccumulate, which there are genetic predispositions for that as far as your bile flow and poor detoxification pathways, then that's just only going to increase the likelihood of that happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Got it. Because I know sometimes, and maybe this isn't related, so you let me know, with PCOS or endometriosis and things like that, a lot of people will say it runs in my family, it's genetic.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I know, and I'm sure there are things that we can do to shift that and change that and influence how that is showing up for our body.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I love about functional genomics. These are genes you can actually do something about. So it's not like oh, I have a gene for muscular dystrophy and there's nothing I can do about it, that's unfortunate, at least right now. Maybe science is trending differently, but functional genomics, you can know that, okay, this gene makes this enzyme, but this enzyme requires this nutrient to work. So if we provide adequate amounts of that nutrient, we can help to compensate for the genetic weakness. And so you can help to compensate or bypass for some genetic variants.
Hmm. Okay, beautiful. And when would you recommend that someone start considering genetic testing?
I don't think it's ever too early. And it's one test. It's going to be the same results from the day you're born as they are on the day you die. And there's so many different things so many different seasons of life that will, knowing what your genetics show can really help to inform what's going on or the best course of action to take. So for my fertility clients, yes, it's great for helping to identify root causes or why something worked or didn't work or which would be the best form of a supplement or that kind of stuff. But also maybe as they get older into menopause and they start getting achy joints or some weird skin stuff, like we can always go back to the genes and see what kind of predispositions are there. And we can also measure when you pair the genetics with functional lab testing, that gives you so many more points of data because the genetics provide the framework and then the lab test can show you what's happening in real time and if those genes are expressing and if so, to what degree.
Hmm. So it sounds like it would be a really smart investment to make before you start trying to build your family because the benefits are endless, really. It could improve your fertility, ideally shorten the time from conception if there are issues. It can help with pregnancy, especially knowing what things could be going on underlining and postpartum. Like postpartum nutrient deficiency is just such a big thing in our day and age because we push and push and push and we don't sit back and nourish ourselves. And then as we age and get older, like it just sounds like there's so many benefits to doing this and not waiting until there's a big issue to do it.
Yes, I completely agree. The clients of mine that I call the unicorns are the ones that are going to be getting married soon or recently married or starting to think about having children because then we have time to optimize that egg health and sperm health and replete nutrient deficiencies and really get rid of toxins because we don't want to pass our toxins on to our baby in utero and through breast milk. And really preconception optimization is ideal and the genetics can really help you to fine tune that. Now, of course, cutting out, avoiding the plastics and cutting out the toxins and eating a more nutrient dense diet, like all of that is the foundational stuff. And what I find is that the people that seem to come to me are the people that are already doing those things, but they're still X. I'm eating clean and I do all this and I'm all up on like the latest research with toxins and biohacking and everything, but I still feel like crap or I still can't get pregnant. And so that's where the genetics can really help to flesh out the stuff. Okay, you're already avoiding plastics. You're already eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables. You're already using natural body care products and stuff. And we can just dive right in because there's not all of the modern day toxins and things that rob our bodies of nutrients to educate them with because we can't just treat the SNP. So many people are like, oh, I have MTHFR, I'm going to start taking methylfolate without changing their diet or without addressing their lifestyle or their house environment, the things that they have control over. They just think that it's almost akin to allopathic medicine where it's instead of taking a drug for a certain symptom, they're just going to throw a supplement at it. And we can't treat the SNP. We need to look at the whole picture.
Hmm. Yeah, and that actually leads me into my next question. So, what would be some of those foundations that you would recommend that is just going to have a benefit for anyone, no matter what your SNPs might be?
Okay. Avoiding the toxins, first off, which is really, really hard to do in this day and age. So, without getting overwhelmed, just try a this is better than that approach. Try and just eat a nutrient dense diet, preferably organic. Getting enough sleep. Sleep is essential and it's free. And I talk about that in my book. Balancing your blood sugar is another one. A lot of people think I don't have diabetes, and so my blood sugar is fine, but there are subtle symptoms. Wonky periods. First off, irregular periods, really problematic periods. There's likely a blood sugar issue going on, but also if you get hangry, if you have a mid afternoon slump. So you don't have to be obese and you don't have to have elevated glucose all the time in order to have blood sugar dysregulation. And so your blood sugar and your insulin's a hormone, and all your hormones play in symphony with each other. So it's really just all the things that we as human beings have been doing for thousands of years, right? Getting good sleep, being connected to the earth, getting fresh air outside, eating whole, clean food would be the foundation of everything, no matter what you have going on.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree with all of those 110%. I think doing those are going to get you so far, but like you said, you have some clients who are doing all of those things already, and then they're still having some issues. So I actually have a client right now as well who is doing all those things. She had a Dutch test in the fall, definitely saw that there was some issues with like phase 2 estrogen metabolism,
Mm-hmm.
has made changes to help support that. Like you said, you can't just supplement with methylfolate and expect things to like all the things to just fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
And she was working with a different provider at that point. We ran another Dutch test in early summer, and she's still having issues with that phase 2 metabolism, despite having made certain changes to help support it. So, what would be your like suggestion for a case like that? Do more genetic testing, or she also had a lot of nutrient deficiencies
Mm-hmm.
on a lab that we did. So, is it like, let's look at the gut? Are you not absorbing what you're eating? Because she has made so many of those foundational changes already.
Yeah, it really, a gut test will be very informative for sure. But that's also when people are already doing things and they have addressed the gut and nutrient deficiencies and absorption issues and stuff. That's when the genes are pretty telltale. So if she's still having some phase 2 issues, then we can look and see what her methylation genes are saying, what her glucuronidation genes and her sulfation genes are saying. And there's dozens within each of those pathways. So it's not just MTHFR and the methylation pathway. The more important that a process is to take place in the body, the more backup routes the body has for it. So clearing estrogen is very important. So it's not just methylated. It gets glucuronidated and sulfated, and then it goes through phase 1 and phase 2. So the genes for something like that, if you've done all the things and you're still having an issue, that's where you can usually tell if there's a genetic predisposition. So the genes are great to pair with functional lab testing. Again, another reason why is because, okay, is this caused by an external factor? Maybe she's been exposed to mold, right? Or maybe she does have gut issues and she's not absorbing. But if those things have been checked and addressed, then it's probably a genetic thing that's going to need some ongoing support, as opposed to, oh, it's because of mold or poor gut health. You can correct those and take care of those, and then the markers should look the way that they're supposed to look, ideally. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? So
Yeah.
you can use your genetics to see if something is a secondary result of something or if it's genetically driven and you can support the functioning of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I know in your book, I'm probably going to say it wrong, but I'd love for you to share the analogy you have about taking the trash out of your door. Because, right, estrogen metabolism is very, very important for fertility. So if you want to share that with the listeners, I think that could be fun.
Yes. And actually, one of my favorite markers on the stool test is beta glucuronidase, and we can talk about that. But so a lot of people just think, oh, I'm going to do a liver detox, right? And I even made a post last year, never just do a detox in a box. Don't do that, because in my book, I talk about a bottoms up approach to detoxification. You don't want to stimulate toxins to come to be mobilized from the liver if your bile is not flowing and if you're not pooping every day. And so, okay, tonight, Tuesday night is trash night for us. So we go and we collect all of the trash from the waste baskets in the bedrooms and the office and that kind of stuff in the bathroom. And then we take them downstairs and put them into the big kitchen bag. And then we have to take the kitchen bag outside the front door to the curb. And so if you're not pooping every day, you can collect all the trash in the house, but that bag is not going to get outside of the house. So you have to make sure that the front door opens so that things don't build up. So first off, you have to be pooping every day. But the trash from the bedrooms upstairs and the bathroom upstairs isn't going to be able to come down to the kitchen to get put in the big trash bag if your bile's not flowing. So bile, one of the many amazing things that our underrated bile does is it takes toxins from the liver and escorts them into the gut to be excreted. And so if your bile is not flowing, those toxins aren't able to get into the gut to be removed by the body. And you want to make sure you're pooping first, then you want to support bile flow, then you want to support your phase 2 liver detox pathways, and then you want to support your phase 1 detox pathways. That way you're making sure there's no traffic jams or clogged pathways. And then the stool testing for the beta glucuronidase, that's an enzyme that helps to make sure that the trash bag stays closed and is taken to the curb. But if you have elevated levels of beta glucuronidase, that's a marker, and you can tell if it's not working right, then it's basically like you're opening the trash and just spilling it back all over the kitchen floor. And so you want to make sure that that estrogen stays packaged up and has a bow on it and is removed from the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. So you have a freebie for the listeners, a cheat sheet on how genetic testing solves unexplained infertility. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It introduces people to the concept of what genetic testing can and can't do and how it can give you an edge beyond just regular functional lab testing. So, what you can tell from genes and what you can't tell from genes. Your genes, for my genetic interpretations, it's never going to give you a meal plan or anything like that, because those companies that are doing that are really only looking at your genes and they're not looking at the whole person. And they don't know your history and they don't know what's worked, what hasn't worked, your level of activity, all of that. So yeah, the freebie, the cheat sheet just explains what genetic testing is and how you can use it to figure out a path forward.
Amazing. So the link for that will be in the show notes. Definitely check that out and download it. And I'd love for you to share with the listeners about your book, because I know you wrote it for practitioners, but you also wrote it in context for regular people who are just trying to conceive, get pregnant, and they want to do what they can to better their chances of conceiving and improve their health.
Yes, so many people are told that IVF is their first and only option. And I give lots of reasons why that is not true. And there's many, many things that you can look at. Well, I originally was going to make 2 books. One for the layperson that is motivated and curious and really advocating for themselves on their fertility journey. And the other one was going to be for the practitioner to use as a guidebook. But I put them in one. And so the technical, biochemical, genetic information that's a bit more meaty is in appendices for each chapter. A lot of people can get a lot of different things out of it, and even people that aren't necessarily trying to conceive, because really the book just looks at common but lesser known causes of oxidative stress that are at the root of so many chronic and puzzling conditions, because again, it all comes down to cellular health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and whether you're trying to get pregnant or not, being fertile is a very key piece of your health. If you're in your reproductive years and you're not fertile, then there's something going on. So it can apply to so many different things. And it's a very easy read. I feel like conversational, it feels like having a conversation with you. And if you want to dive deeper, like you said, you can go to the appendices and learn more. So I highly recommend that. I know I got mine off of Amazon. I don't know if it's available anywhere else.
Yeah, my website, Amazon, it's an academically published book. So it's actually on the Taylor and Francis website. And I believe it's on barnesandnoble.com as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll at least have the Amazon link in the show notes for that. And what are 3 simple action steps from our conversation that you'd like to leave with the listeners?
I was listening to some of your previous podcasts and I was just very much in agreement with what other people have said. And so it's so nice. You got to hear it twice, 3, 4, 5 times because it's so important. And so it's really making sure that you have those foundational boxes checked off first. Eating nutrient dense foods, right? I have a chapter in my book that says eat a nutritious diet, not a healthy diet, right? Because anything can be called healthy, but you really want to make sure it's nutrient dense. So you need nutrients for all of your genes to make their enzymes and for all of the detox pathways in our body to work. So nutrition is really information for our genes. So definitely nutrition, it all starts with food. Second would be make sure you're drinking clean water. So get the best filtration that you can and make sure you're remineralizing. And then third, I think would be, there's so many to choose from. I'm going to revisit the sleep. Really get serious about your sleep because that's when our body heals. That's when our body cleans house. That's when our brain can get rid of a lot of toxins. And yeah, those would be my three.
Yeah, those are good ones. Absolutely. So let the listeners know where they can find you, learn more, and connect with you.
Yes. My name is my website, jacquelyndowns.com, JACLYNDOWNS. And you can follow me on Instagram at Functional Genomics.
Mhm. And I know you offer genetic testing. I don't know if you want to share what that could look like if anyone is interested in learning more about that.
Sure. I do ultra personalized, like custom crafted genetic interpretations. So most companies are designed for high volume and they're just reporting about your genes, which I touched on a few minutes ago. But I do a very in-depth health history intake, asking so many questions about your dental health, your skin health, your previous houses you've lived in, exposures and stress levels and all of that. And as I'm reviewing your genes to make your typically 40 to 60 page typed document, custom interpretation, I'm emailing you saying, hey, I'm seeing some predispositions for this. Can you tell me, is this an issue? Does this run in your family? Something like that. And then I present the interpretation by combing through that typed document that I created while showing you your genes in the software that I use. And then I make a video sharing my screen. And so you get the video and you get the typed document. And then you can always schedule a one-to-one consultation with me if you do want to dive deeper. So they take a while. They do take weeks or sometimes a couple months because your spit test goes to Rutgers University. And then once they take the 6 to 12 weeks to analyze your genes, then I do the interpretation. So they're really ultra personalized. They're not your, do you have any of these 30 to 100 genetic variants? Yes or no. And then here's the information we have about each of that, because those reports contradict each other. And like I said, they don't really know you and your history and your symptoms and what's going on and what you're taking and what you're not taking. And watch out for those. Okay, you get what you pay for with a lot of genetic interpretations.
Mm-hmm. It sounds very comprehensive and personalized, which I think we need more of in this day and age because we don't all fit into one box. Yeah, definitely find Jacqueline, check her out, check out her book. And if you're interested in the testing, then reach out to her and do it because, like we talked about earlier, there's just so many benefits outside of just getting pregnant if that's what your goal is. But thank you so much for your time and just sharing your expertise. And I know your passion with us today, Jacqueline. It was a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Are you ready to finally discover why you haven't been able to get or stay pregnant? The Ultimate Fertility Blueprint is a quick, insightful quiz designed to reveal your overall capacity to conceive and help you discover potential root causes and areas to address to improve your fertility so you can finally get and stay pregnant. You'll find the link in the show notes. As a quick reminder and disclaimer, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult your doctor or healthcare provider before starting any new supplement or protocol, especially if you're actively trying to conceive or undergoing treatment.